The first wrong thing that night was not the phone ringing at 12:07. It was the attic pull cord hanging 2 inches lower than it had at supper. I stood in the dark hallway with one hand on the light switch and looked at that little wooden knob swaying above the runner rug, and I felt something cold move through me that had nothing to do with age. In a house you've lived in for 43 years, you know when a thing is wrong by an inch. I had just finished my ordinary rounds. Back door locked, thermostat nudged down to 66. Carol's African violet in the kitchen window turned a quarter turn toward the moonlight, the way I still did out of habit, though she'd been gone 11 months. And the plant ought to have died by now from pure loneliness. The dishwasher hummed low in the kitchen. The little nightlight by the stairs cast a weak amber puddle on the wall. Outside, March rain tapped at the gutters and ran off the eaves in a steady whisper. Elaine and Aaron were staying over that weekend in the guest room because Aaron had some church committee meeting early in the morning, and because these days people said things like, "It's good for you not to be alone too much, Dad," in the same tone they might have used on a dog after surgery. I kept my hand on the switch and looked up at the attic cord. At supper, Aaron had reached over me for the cornbread without so much as excusing himself. Then later, when I mentioned Carol used to keep her winter quilts in the cedar chest up there till Easter, he smiled that patient little smile of his and said, "No, Tom." Toward the end, she had me move those to the hall closet. She didn't want you climbing stairs or fooling with ladders. He said it easy, kind, almost. That was how he did things. Elaine had not even looked at me before she said, "Dad, that's right. You were pretty worn out back then. Pretty worn out." Like being tired for a few months could somehow cancel out 43 years of knowing where my wife kept things. Nobody at that table said a word after that. Not Elaine, not Aaron, not even my grandson Luke, who was busy dragging the last green bean through his ranch, dressing with the full concentration of being 9. The silence sat there with the steam from the casserole. I remember folding my napkin once, then again, though it didn't need it. I was still standing there under the attic cord when the phone rang in my hand. Daniel's name lit up the screen. My oldest boy never called after 10 unless somebody was dead or about to be. I answered on the first buzz. "Danny?" "Dad." His voice came low and clipped, the way it got when he was at work and trying not to sound scared. "Do exactly what I say. Turn everything off in the house, every light, every sound. Then go up to the attic and lock that door behind you." I looked down the dark hall toward the guest room. "What are you talking about? Don't argue with me. Is Aaron there?" My throat tightened. "Yes, don't tell him I called." For a second, I just listened to the rain and the dishwasher, and my own pulse starting to push behind my eyes. "Daniel," I said, quieter now, "you're scaring me." His breath came hard through the line. "Good. Go to the attic, right now, and don't let your son-in-law see you do it." I stared again at that lowered cord. "What did he do?" I whispered. "Dad." His voice cracked sharp enough to stop me cold. "Just do it." I had not heard him use that tone on me since he was 16, and I stepped between him and a live wire in the garage. I turned the kitchen light off first, then the lamp beside Carol's chair, then the hall light. The dishwasher clicked louder in the dark than it had in the light, so I opened it and killed it mid-cycle. I could smell the lemon detergent and wet heat coming out of it. Somewhere in the guest room, a floorboard gave one dry tick, and I froze. "Daniel," I murmured, keeping the phone close, "tell me if Elaine's in danger." There was a pause on the line. "I don't know yet." That was worse than a yes. I reached up for the attic cord and pulled. The ladder came down with a soft wooden shutter, louder than I wanted. I waited. No door opened. No voice called out. The attic hatch breathed down that old smell of insulation, cedar and summer dust. I climbed as quietly as a 71-year-old man can climb in socks, with my right knee complaining on every rung. At the top, I pulled the ladder halfway up after me and eased the small latch shut. The attic was black except for the slimmest wash of yard light coming through the round vent by the far gable. "Stay put," Daniel said. "Text me only if you have to. Don't call out. Don't move around any more than you need to. You still haven't told me why." "I will. Just watch." Then he hung up. I crouched there with the phone in my hand and listened to the house below me. A man learns the sounds of his own house the same way he learns his wife's breathing. The freight train groan in winter when the old baseboard pipe kicks in. The spot outside the bathroom that gives a little pop if the heat's been on. The low rattle in the dining room window when rain comes from the west. Carol used to say I could hear a lie through drywall. I don't know about that, but I know when footsteps belong. For a long minute there was nothing. Then I heard the guest room door open. Soft steps. Careful ones, not Elaine's. Aaron wore his weight like a man trying to seem lighter than he was. He moved down the hall and stopped directly under me. I lowered myself to one knee and put my eye to the narrow crack between two attic floorboards near the hatch frame. Light leaked up from below in a thin line. I could see only part of the hallway at first, the top of the coat tree, the edge of the framed family photo from Myrtle Beach, the crown of Aaron's head as he looked both ways. He was wearing jeans and his blue quarter-zip pullover, the church one with the little stitched cross by the chest. He should have been asleep. He did not call my name. He did not check on Elaine. He reached up slow and practiced and touched the attic cord. Then he stopped and frowned, because the ladder was not where he expected it to be. I felt my mouth go dry. He stood there another second, looking at the closed hatch above him. Then, instead of pulling it down, he went to the linen closet at the end of the hall and took something off the top shelf, a flashlight, wrapped in one of Carol's old yellow dish towels. Carol's. That towel had little faded lemons on it. She used to wrap breakables in it at Christmas. Aaron unwrapped the flashlight, clicked it on low, and turned toward the back storage room under the eaves, the one off the hallway that nobody used anymore except me when I put away folding chairs or a fan. He slipped inside and left the door open 3 inches. From where I crouched, I could see the beam moving over boxes. My chest started to hurt in a tight, mean way. Carol had kept some private things back there during the last year she was alive. Not because she was secretive by nature. Just because sickness brings people into your house and into your drawers, and a woman wants one place nobody is forever straightening for her. I inched across the joists, slow as prayer, until I found the older vent opening over that back room. There was a wider seam there where the floorboards never met right. I looked down. Aaron was kneeling in front of the cedar chest Carol's father made in 1958. The one with the brass corner caps and the water ring on top from a sweating glass of sweet tea set down 30 years ago. He had the lid open. He was not rummaging like a man cleaning. He was searching like a man afraid of time. He moved aside Afghans, old photo albums, 2 folded baby blankets, then reached both hands into the back corner and felt along the inside wall. I stopped breathing, because that was where Carol used to hide things she didn't want sorted, bills she hadn't paid yet, birthday cards she wanted to answer properly. Once, years ago, the little silver charm bracelet Elaine lost at Cedar Point. Aaron found something. He drew out a flat object wrapped in wax paper, stared at it, and for the first time since I'd known him, the mildness dropped clean off his face. What was underneath it was not anger. It was fear. He shoved the thing under his arm, swept the blankets roughly back into place, and stood. In his hurry, he left the cedar chest lid half open, and tucked just behind it, where his flashlight had glanced but not settled, I saw the corner of a white envelope in Carol's handwriting. My name was on it. My name was on it. For a second, I stayed where I was, one knee sunk into old insulation, my hand flat on the floorboards to steady myself, and watched Aaron turn off the flashlight. He stood very still in that little storage room under the eaves, listening the way burglars do in movies, except there was nothing theatrical about this. The house was his wife's father's house in the eyes of polite people. He moved around in it with the confidence of a man everybody had already agreed belonged. Then he took the wax paper bundle and slipped out of the room, leaving Carol's cedar chest open behind him like a mouth that had not finished speaking. I waited until I heard the guest room door close again. My knee had gone half numb by the time I eased the attic hatch open and lowered the ladder enough to climb down. The hall smelled faintly of dust and lemon dish soap. I could hear Aaron's snore start up almost too quickly behind the guest room door, soft at first, then steady. Maybe he'd done that sort of thing often enough to fall asleep afterward. Maybe he was only pretending. Either way, I kept moving. The storage room door gave a little scrape at the bottom when I opened it. Carol used to complain about that scrape every winter and then forget to mention it once spring came. I shut the door behind me and clicked on the flashlight Aaron had left pushed too far back on the linen shelf to look accidental. The cedar chest sat open. A green Afghan hung out one side, and one of Elaine's old baby blankets had slipped halfway to the floor. I bent slowly, picked up the white envelope, and ran my thumb over the front. Tom, not Thomas, the way bank people wrote it. Not Tommy, which only my mother had called me. Just Tom. The way Carol wrote my name on grocery lists when she wanted me to stop for milk on the way home, or on birthday cards she pretended she had not bought until the last minute. My hands were shaking enough that I had to sit down on an overturned paint can to tear it open straight. Inside was one lined sheet folded twice, and a cassette tape in a cracked clear case. On the tape, in Carol's slanted blue handwriting, were the words, "If Aaron is looking, play this first." I sat there in that narrow room with the flashlight between my shoes and the rain still tapping over the gutters, and for a moment I could not make myself open the note. My chest felt hollowed out. Grief does that. It gives you strange loyalties. I had spent almost a year protecting the dead from mess the dead were apparently trying to hand me. I unfolded the paper. "Tom, if you are reading this, it means I was right to hide it. I pray I was wrong about why. I know you. You will want peace first. Please do not let peace bury the truth." That far was enough to make me press the heel of my hand against my mouth. I read the rest standing up because suddenly sitting felt too weak for it. The note was short. Carol wrote that she had started keeping a private journal and making tapes because too many things were being remembered for her. She wrote that medicine times had changed more than once after she had asked otherwise. She wrote that conversations she meant to have with me alone kept being delayed, softened, or retold. She wrote that Aaron was always helpful in ways that made it harder to object without sounding mean. She wrote that she was tired and in pain and not always sure when distrust was wisdom and when it was just fear. But she did know one thing. I was being pushed gently out of the room in my own house, and if she got weaker, it would get easier for other people to tell me what she had wanted. At the bottom, she had written, "I should have said more sooner. You should have too. That is not all your fault." I had to read that last line twice because my eyes wouldn't hold still on it. The old wound opened then, not her death itself. I had carried that every day since April and knew its weight. It was the memory of those last 7 months when the house had stopped feeling like ours and started feeling like a place where charts, pill bottles, casseroles, and low voices traveled in and out while I stood with my own coffee going cold in my hand, not quite keeping up. I remembered the morning nurse from Chillicothe saying, "Let Aaron handle the medication log. He's so organized," while I stood 3 feet away. I remembered Elaine saying, "Dad, sit down for once," in front of people who used to ask me where the extension cords were kept and whether the grills still ran hot on the left side. I remembered Aaron taking the phone from Carol's hand one afternoon because she was tired, then telling me later, "She doesn't want Daniel making a fuss and driving down tonight." At the time I had believed him. I had believed a lot of things because I was tired and scared and because Carol was still alive, which made every hour feel like something I should be grateful for instead of something I ought to question. I took the note and tape upstairs to the kitchen, moving with the care of a man carrying a lit match through dry grass. The house looked ordinary again, refrigerator hum, magnet with Luke's school picture on the side, Carol's recipe tin on the counter with the lid that never closed flush. I stood there in the dark and knew with a kind of sick clarity that the ordinary shape of things had protected Aaron better than any lie would have. Helpful men are dangerous in families because everybody wants to rest. My old cassette player was in the cabinet above the microwave. Carol used to listen to church choir practice tapes on it in the garage when she painted lawn chairs. I set it on the counter and slid the tape in. Her voice came out thin and papery at first from sitting in plastic for who knew how long. "Tom, if this is the first one you found." Then he was looking. I gripped the edge of the counter. I don't know what all he knows I kept. I don't know how much of this is me being sick and scared. But I want one place where my own words stay my own words. There was a rustle, maybe bedsheets, maybe notebook paper. I asked for my 6 o'clock pills at 6 and got told it was too soon. It wasn't too soon. I know what too soon is. I asked that Daniel be told the scan got moved up, and Aaron said he would tell him later because Tom looked worn to the bone and didn't need a house full of panic. I don't like people deciding what you can bear for you. My knees nearly gave way. I reached back for a chair and missed it the first time. Then her voice softened. "I know you're tired. I know you think being grateful is the same thing as being fair. It isn't." I stopped the tape. The kitchen was so quiet after that I could hear rainwater ticking down the downspout outside the breakfast nook. My own face in the window above the sink looked like my father's had the last year he was alive, drawn and a little stunned, as if something inside him had finally stopped making excuses. My phone buzzed on the table. "Daniel, you safe?" I stared at the screen a second, then typed back. "Found a tape. A note from your mother." He called immediately. I answered in a whisper, though nobody could hear me in the kitchen. She knew. I heard him close a car door on his end. "Dad, listen to me. Has Aaron seen that you found anything?" "No." "Good. Don't confront him alone." The clipped force in his voice was still there, but beneath it I heard something else now. Guilt, maybe. Or relief that I'd finally seen enough not to turn back. "What do you know?" I asked. A beat of silence. "Not everything," he said. "Enough to know he's been trying to get into areas he shouldn't be. Enough to know he asked me strange questions 2 months ago about whether Mom ever kept journals or old tapes. He said Elaine wanted to make a memory box for the kids. It didn't sit right. Then last week he called about attic insulation and whether old paper stores better in a climate-controlled place. That didn't sit right either. I leaned against the counter, staring at Carol's recipe tin. "Why didn't you say something?" "'Cause I thought maybe I was being unfair. Because he helped. Because Mom was sick and everybody remembers things ugly after. Pick a reason, Dad." He sounded tired suddenly. Like my son again, instead of the voice on the phone that had ordered me upstairs. I said he made all of us feel like questioning him was the ugly thing. "Yeah," Daniel said. "That's about the size of it." I looked toward the hallway. The guest room door stayed shut. "I've got more to hear," I said. "Then hear it," Daniel said. "And don't let him know you know." I'm driving down. By 5:30, the rain had gone lighter. Just a gray dripping over the deck and the bird feeder Carol kept full even in bad weather. I played the tape twice, then found the journal under the cedar chest false bottom, wrapped in one of Carol's old choir scarves. She had dated entries in careful lines, not every day, just on days when something struck her hard enough to want to witness. April 14. Aaron answered for Tom again while I sat there. I nearly laughed from the meanness of it. I was the sick one, and somehow Tom was the one being managed. March 22. Elaine means well. I am tired of that sentence. February 3. I asked Tom for the red sweater and Aaron brought the blue. Small thing, except it wasn't Tom who forgot. January 29. I wanted time alone with my husband and got told he'd just fallen asleep in his chair and needed the rest. He had not been asleep. I could hear the garage radio. I had to set the journal down after that. The worst pain in getting old is not your body giving out where you expect it. It is finding out how easily the world will build a softer, smaller version of you if it helps everybody else move easier around the room. Around 7, when the house began to wake, I heard the guest room door open and Elaine's slippers whisper down the hall. Then Aaron's voice, low and warm, asking whether she wanted coffee. Warm. I sat at the kitchen table with the journal closed under an old Cabela's cap and watched them come in like a pair from any ordinary Saturday morning. Elaine kissed my cheek. Aaron asked how I slept. I looked at him and saw, maybe for the first time clear, what had made him powerful. It was not force. It was the way he left room for people to keep admiring themselves while he moved them where he wanted. "Fine," I said. He smiled. "Good. I was up once around midnight. Thought I heard something in the hall." I held his eyes. "Did you?" "Just that. 2 words." For the first time, not much, but enough. Something shifted in his face. Elaine never noticed. She was pouring coffee, talking about stopping by Kroger after church. Aaron recovered in a blink and said, "Probably the old house settling." The old house settling. Like the night had only been wood and rain. Like he had not been kneeling in my wife's cedar chest with fear on his face. Then Elaine set my mug in front of me and said, in that same smoothing voice I had accepted too long, "Dad, don't forget Ruth is coming by after lunch to pick through Mom's things in the storage room." Aaron said he'd already started organizing what matters. What matters? I looked from my daughter to my son-in-law and felt something inside me go still and hard. Carol had hidden her own voice in this house because she knew what would happen if she left it to memory and good manners. I put my hand over the mug to steady it, felt the heat through the ceramic, and knew with a clarity that left no room for comfort that by afternoon they were all going to hear her themselves. I was done letting the wrong man tell this family what my wife had meant. I did not go to church. At 10:15, when Aaron came down the hall in his pressed khakis and navy blazer with his Bible under one arm, I was already in the family room with the curtains half drawn and the tape recorder set on the coffee table where Carol used to keep the Christmas cards. I had moved the wing chair away from the wall and turned the sofa to face it more squarely. Not by much, just enough that the room felt different when you walked into it. Deliberate. Aaron slowed when he saw me. "Tom," he said in that low, patient voice of his. "You all right?" "No," I said. "Sit down." He smiled a little, the way people do when they think they're looking at an old man having some private weather. "We're going to be late." "Then be late." Elaine came behind him with her purse over one shoulder and stopped in the doorway. She looked from me to the tape recorder, to the yellow legal pad on the table where I had copied down dates from Carol's journal in my neat teacher's print. "Dad, what is this?" "Daniel's on his way." That changed the room. Not loudly, not visibly maybe, if you didn't know your own daughter's face, but something went still in Elaine's mouth. Aaron set the Bible down on the end table. "Why is Daniel coming?" I looked at him and let the silence stay just a second longer than polite people usually do. "Because I'm done being the only one in this family who gets corrected." Elaine blinked. "Dad, no." I held up my hand, and for once she stopped. "You're going to listen first." Aaron gave a soft exhale through his nose, almost a laugh. "Tom, if this is about last night, you looked upset this morning and I wondered if maybe—" "Sit down." Something in my voice must have reached him then. Maybe because I had spent a year making everything easier for everybody else. Maybe because men like Aaron know exactly when the floor starts giving under them. He sat. Elaine did not. She stayed standing by the doorway with her purse still hanging off her shoulder like she hadn't decided whether she was leaving or staying. Daniel arrived 5 minutes later in a dark coat still damp at the shoulders from the rain, and Ruth came in behind him because Daniel had picked her up from church parking lot after calling ahead. Ruth took one look at the room, at my face, then at the tape recorder, and set her gloves carefully in her lap without saying a word. Aaron looked offended now. Not scared yet, just inconvenienced by drama he did not approve of. "Tom," he said, "whatever this is, we don't need an audience." I felt something old and tired in me settle into place. "That's the first true thing you've said all morning," I told him. "You never did want an audience." Elaine looked at me as if I had slapped the table. Ruth lowered her eyes. Daniel stayed by the fireplace with his arms folded, watching Aaron the way men in his line of work watch doors. I picked up Carol's note first, the short one. My hand was steady now. "This was in the storage room," I said. "In the cedar chest your mother kept private things in. Aaron was in there after midnight." Aaron started to speak, but Daniel said very quietly, "Don't." That was the first time I saw real alarm move across Aaron's face. Elaine turned to him. "After midnight?" He shook his head once, smooth and easy. "I heard something. I checked the house. I looked in the storage room because I thought maybe a raccoon or a leak, something like that." "With a flashlight wrapped in Carol's dish towel?" I asked. That landed. He didn't answer right away. I unfolded the note and read it aloud. My voice did not shake. I had expected it to, but once I started reading Carol's words into that room, something larger than fear took over. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was love. Maybe after enough months of being handled, a man's voice finally gets tired of waiting for permission. When I finished, nobody spoke. Elaine was pale now. She sat slowly on the edge of the sofa without taking her eyes off the note in my hand. Aaron cleared his throat. "Carol was very sick," he said. "You can't build a whole accusation out of a sick woman's private fears." That was when Ruth lifted her head. "She was sick," Ruth said. "Not stupid." Aaron turned toward her with that calm church face still mostly in place. "I didn't say she was. You didn't have to." The room went quiet again. I reached over and pressed play. Carol's voice came thin through the little speaker, but there was enough of her in it to make Elaine put a hand over her mouth before 30 seconds had passed. When Carol said, "I don't like people deciding what you can bear for you," I saw Daniel close his eyes once and open them again. I let the tape run farther this time. Far enough for Carol to mention the 6 o'clock pills. Far enough for her to say that Aaron kept softening messages and deciding who needed to know what. Far enough for her to say, in that tired voice I knew better than my own by the end, that she wanted time alone with me and kept getting managed around. Elaine made a small sound then, something between a breath and a whimper. Aaron leaned forward. That's not fair. I was trying to help. Everybody in this room knows I was trying to help. No, I said. It came out harder than anything else I had said all morning. No. You were trying to become necessary. There is a difference. He stared at me. For months, maybe longer, I had pictured any confrontation with Aaron ending in noise, with him out-talking me, or Elaine crying, or me sounding like some jealous old fool guarding hurt feelings. But that was the lie I had been living inside. Truth did not make me smaller. It put me back where I belonged. I opened the journal. I read the entry about the red sweater. Then the one about him answering for me while Carol was still alive to hear it happen. Then the line that broke the room clean down the middle. Elaine means well. I am tired of that sentence. Elaine bowed her head as though something physical had struck her. Dad, she whispered. I looked at her then, really looked. You told me I didn't remember clearly, I said, more than once. Tears slid down her face at once, sudden and helpless. I thought he was protecting us. I thought you were exhausted and you thought comfort was kinder than truth. She covered her face with both hands. Aaron stood up too fast. This is insane. Carol wrote things when she was medicated. Confused. Hurting. Tom, you know grief twists memory. Daniel, you of all people should know how people make patterns out of nothing when they need someone to blame. Daniel pushed off the mantle and stepped forward just enough to change the air. I know what deliberate searching looks like, he said. I know what selective questions look like. I know you asked me twice about whether Mom kept journals before you had any reason to. And I know my father was in his own attic last night because I told him to get there before you destroyed whatever was left. Aaron's head turned sharply toward him. You set me up? No, Daniel said. You walked into what you were already doing. That was the moment the room stopped belonging to Aaron. He looked around as if trying to find the old arrangement again, the one where his voice calmed people and other people's pain made him important. But nobody was waiting for him now, not Elaine, not Ruth. Not Daniel, and not me. I stood up. At 71, it takes a little more care than it once did, but I stood all the way and stayed there. I had been sitting through my own reduction for too long. You were thanked in front of me for carrying my wife, I said. You let people praise you for understanding her better than I did. You stood in my house and corrected me about the woman I slept beside for 43 years. And my mistake. I looked at Elaine, then back at him. My mistake was thinking decency meant keeping quiet while you did it. Aaron's face had changed now. The mildness was gone for good. There was no monster underneath, no wild-eyed villain, and somehow that made it worse. Just a middle-aged man who had gotten used to other people stepping back for him. I did more for her in those months than anybody else, he said, including you. The sentence hung there. Elaine lowered her hands from her face and stared at him in absolute disbelief, as if even now she had not thought he would say the ugliest thing aloud. I felt the blow of it, felt it all the way down. But pain has a strange way of clarifying some men at my age. Maybe you brought more pills to the recliner, I said. Maybe you answered more phones. Maybe you liked being the one with the clipboard and the keys and the useful tone. But you did not love her more than I did, and you do not get to stand in this room and tell me what my marriage amounted to. Nobody moved. Rain tapped once against the front window. The furnace came on with a low push from the vent. Somewhere down the hall, Luke's forgotten toy truck, nudged by somebody's shoe earlier, settled with a tiny plastic click. Ruth spoke without looking at Aaron. You need to leave. He laughed once, short and stunned. Elaine? Elaine looked at him the way people look at wreckage after they realize there is no version of it that turns back into what it was. You went through her things at night, she said. You let me tell my father he didn't remember my mother. You let me do that. He opened his mouth, closed it. That was his punishment more than anything Daniel might ever do with what he knew. The room no longer needed his explanations. Daniel walked to the door and opened it. Aaron picked up his Bible from the end table. For one strange second that almost undid me, I thought of all the Sunday mornings he had stood in this house pouring coffee and talking softly while I thanked God there were good people left. He paused near the doorway as if waiting for one person, any person, to soften it for him. No one did. After he left, nobody spoke for a while. Elaine sat crying quietly, not theatrically, not in a way that asked to be rescued. Ruth put a hand on her shoulder, then took it away again. Daniel turned the deadbolt. I sat back down because my legs had started to shake from the release of it. Elaine wiped her face and looked at me. And there was no filter left between us now. No Aaron to glance toward. No soft language to make a wound sound tidy. "I am sorry," she said. "I did that to you. I did." I nodded once. It was not forgiveness, not yet. But it was the first honest thing she had said in a long while. By the time the house quieted again, the day had gone pale and long around us. Daniel took the tapes and journals only long enough to copy them and put them back in my hands before supper. Ruth stayed to help Elaine gather the church casserole she had brought and forgotten. No one asked me what should be done with Carol's things anymore. They asked where I wanted them kept. That mattered. Near dawn the next morning, after the coffee had burned half a pot on the warmer and Daniel had finally slept a few hours in the guest room Aaron had used, I went back up to the attic alone. The sky outside the round vent was turning from charcoal to pearl. Dust drifted in the thin light. The cedar chest sat open where I had left it, but it no longer looked violated. Just tired, honest. I sat on the floorboards with Carol's journal in my lap and my back against the rafters. The house below me was still. No low voices, no smoothing over. No one deciding what I could bear. I opened to the first page and laid my hand flat over her writing. For the first time since she died, the silence did not feel like she had been taken from me twice. It felt, in that dim, cold light, as if I had finally gotten her back from the wrong hands.